I had a substance use disorder for a very, very long time, 40 years almost. Started very young. Didn't start with the pills. I started very young with the tobacco, with the drinking. And I think one of my first gateways really was trauma. You know, I come from an alcoholic family. So I think my first introduction into this was trauma, trying to escape trauma.
My addiction had lasted since my early teens all the way into my 40s. I returned home in an evening of desperation, and I convinced my son to allow me to have the car keys so I could leave to go get more of everything at this point. I had become addicted to everything, with this sole intent of ending my life. And that evening, I drove as fast as I could and closed my eyes. I woke up alive in a jail cell.
I actually started really young experimenting with alcohol. I noticed that it took away a lot of fear and insecurities that I had. I was probably in 5th grade when I was ejected from school for taking airplane bottles of alcohol to school. As I progressed later in high school, started off smoking marijuana, got into hallucinogenics and cocaine, and then that progressed throughout my 20s, and then into my 30s I was introduced to opioids.
I believe I had contracted Hep C prior to my son being born. A little bit later my daughter came along, and I was an IV drug user before they came along. And when both of my children were born, they ended up being my addiction. It wasn't until they started doing their own things did I start to change. Once they had their own apartments and so on, it seemed like my addiction that I was able to bury for so long ended up coming back up tenfold.
So in our area, what we're seeing is a wide variety of individuals who are impacted by a substance use disorder. The focus seems to be on the opioid use disorder issue that's going on from individuals who have been involved with heroin, but specifically what they're seeing, I believe a greater increase in is the prescription medication, getting people initially addicted, and then people transferring over to heroin as it being a cheaper option for people to get to while still being able to maintain their addiction.
Well, I lost my son Eric 10 years ago from an overdose, and I found it difficult to find anything in the area that would suit the needs that I had. I did a lot of different organizations. The churches run grief groups and compassionate friends, and I just wasn't comfortable there. I mean, those children they've lost children from anything from cancer to accidents. And you got this kid that did everything right. He, graduated from school, just got married, just had a baby, and then he got hit by a car. And then I had my kid who was in jail and didn't pay child support and stole from us. And I just was not comfortable. And not that they judged me, but I felt it was just a very uncomfortable situation. So I found this group online, and they do have local chapters, and so I started a local chapter here.
And this area was a big coal mining area, church and a bar on every corner. I could remember in the late 60s, early 70s, I would go to my grandparents would send me to the bar to get them pints or quarts, whatever. So it was a big area that was, everything was drink and 3-day funerals, 3-day weddings, everybody drank. The culture changed from people drinking to people using drugs.
And then I ended up joining a 12-step program, still to this day. But 2 years into that recovery, I come to find out that I had stage 4 liver disease. Stage 4 liver disease, and that there was no cure. It was devastating. I had 2 years sober, and now I'm dealing with, liver issues. Fast forward through 5 years. My husband and I were told that I wasn't going to make it. I kept having the faith, and being in the fellowship, I was able to have a lot of good support around me. I continued to work on some of those things that affected me, and caused a whole lot of that addiction when I was younger. It seemed like at the very, very end, people would always say, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm going to accept whatever God's will is for me. If it's not meant to be, then I'm going to accept that. It's not necessarily always a bad thing. It was right at the very end, fast forward, and I looked at my husband and I said, it's time. And he said, oh no, I don't want to hear this. And I said, it's time. And it was the next morning, I get a call that a donor had become available. I was out of the hospital after a liver transplant within 7 days. When I got home, it seemed like somebody wanted me to go and find out. They can't tell you the name, and they can't tell you where they live, but they have to tell you the age, boy, girl, and how they passed. So I ended up going on the computer, and based upon the region, that little boy was 14 years old. That little boy's name was Will. To me, that little boy's name was God's will.
1991, I was in that very same jail cell for underage drinking. And here I was, January 26, 2014, in a jail cell, the same jail cell. And when I asked for something, when I called out to say, please give me a sign, what I found was, when I opened my eyes, where the ultimate cardinal rule you're not supposed to do when you're incarcerated is that you're not supposed to scratch your initials or write your name on the wall. And here I was in 2014, a broken man, and when I opened my eyes, there were those initials. So it gave me hope that there was something that I could do different with my life. I was accepted into a diversion program, treatment court, since graduated, and I've never looked back. And my life is now in service to those that are lost like me.
And it wasn't until 2017 that I finally went to treatment and got sober, and then moved from Western Pennsylvania out here to the Wilkes-Barre area. Found the recovery community out here to be amazing. I got involved with Alcoholics Anonymous and worked the 12 steps. Through that is what really introduced me what recovery is and kind of what the recipe to staying clean is.
5th time in the penitentiary. Not 1, not 5 times. That's how hard-headed I was, and that's how involved I was with this subculture of drugs. Every 10 years I changed my drug, so I never really thought I had a habit. And then I was introduced to the heroin, and it brought me to my knees.
And unfortunately, there's a stigma for anybody that uses drugs, but there's a stigma that's attached to the family also. That we did something wrong, that we didn't raise them right, you know, that it was our fault. That if we raised them right, they wouldn't do drugs. The Grass Group does, we host an event every year in honor of International Overdose Awareness Day. And we have a big event at Kirby Park, which is a really nice event. It's got a lot of speakers and information tables. And so we bring the poster. That's a poster of all our family members.
And I work K through 12. I do what's called universal prevention, going into the classroom, talking to students about the dangers of drugs and alcohol. I also work with a little more targeted population. I work with kids who may be struggling with their own use or use in the family, maybe being raised by a grandparent or other kin whose parents are either incarcerated or passed away due to substance abuse issues. We also work with kids coming back out of treatment, making sure they're following through with their outpatient facility that they were that's servicing them. And then we also go into the community and we talk to parents and we talk to daycares and we talk to church groups and pretty much really trying to raise awareness. It's really important that we educate our kids on these dangers, but I think we also need to educate the people around them. I think our community needs to be educated, and we need to be giving a clear and consistent message to our young people.
Kids will come home and they might find a parent, or it doesn't even need to be a parent, it could be a relative who has substance use disorder. Maybe they find them home and they're passed out and they can't wake them up. That could be a very traumatic experience for a child. They might not know what to do. Some might have to call 911 because mom and dad aren't waking up. They might have lost a parent or a relative due to an overdose, and they don't understand what happened and why that parent or relative is no longer there. So these can be very traumatic experiences for that child. So we want to make sure that that child has someone to reach out to and talk to. And being in a school makes it so much easier because the child's already in school. So no one has to run that child after school and make appointments. I'm readily available right there in the school that they could come down and talk to at any point in time.
And there's so many kids overdosing, and I know so many of their parents and grandparents. You know, it's sad. So things like this are so needed, so needed. Education, stigma, gotta stop with that stigma. Because of the stigma, people are embarrassed to get help. They're embarrassed. They don't have to be. It is a disease. It takes over your brain. I'm not saying it's right. You know, you have to be punished for the things you did wrong, but then give the people a chance, you know? People could overcome this, and until it happens in their family, you know? Oh, I hate them words, junkie, loser. Horrible, horrible.
If I could go back and talk to my younger self, I think that I would just let him know that he's okay, that things are going to be all right. Do I think I'd be where I was today? Never, ever. But I had to get out of the way. And when I got out of the way, change could happen. I never, in 1,000 years, thought that I could live the life that I do today. But more importantly, there are millions of me out there, stuck like that boy was, that if they hear this message, that they can hold on and have hope, because hold on, pain ends is hope.
So, as one of the younger council members, I was sick of waking up every day and reading the newspapers and seeing someone my age or a little bit older lose their life to this disease, and I felt like I had to do something. So at a council meeting, I got up and said I wanted to help, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. I just know I wanted to help as many people as possible and keep it as positive as possible, because this is such a negative issue, and people just think it's such a generic thing and it happens to only certain people, and it really has no bounds, and I wanted the public to become aware of that.
Matt and I have been friends for years now, so we gave him a call, seeing is there anything I could do to help. We got together to start trying to figure out if there was something we could do together to make this happen. And the idea of doing a seminar, at the time just on the opioids, to bring awareness to the community of what the crisis is, what the treatments are, how many of them there are in the county, and it expanded into what treatment we could do for it. Once we did the first one, we had such an outpouring of people saying, oh, could you do one here, could you do one there, could you do one here? We decided to keep the process going, and we also were approached the idea of not just doing opioids, but making it substance abuse, that there's so many other things that people are addicted to in addition to the opioids. Could we expand it?
And I wear this wristband that says anyone, just a nice reminder that every day don't take it for granted and help as many people as you can.
Again, not just to students, which is where my focus is, but also to the community and to families. And these forums are doing that. I watch these people coming out and learning not only some of the stuff maybe they didn't know about drug and alcohol, but also learning that it isn't just them. Other people are suffering and struggling too. We are helping not only raise awareness, but reduce stigma, which is extremely important when it comes to dealing with this crisis.
I think that this is an absolutely wonderful thing that we're doing, getting out there with these programs through the county, bringing these people out, because again, I think there's a lot of fear still, and the stigma is still there that it's not me or I am the only one who is involved in this, and no one understands what I'm going through. So when people do come out to these forums, they get to see that they aren't alone and that they can make those connections with other people. And I think that's a wonderful thing. We can't do this alone.
The more we talk about it, the more the stigma will be diminished.
There's nothing better than when you watch a client come in that is completely broken and they turn their life around, and now they have fulfilling, satisfying life, and you see it on their face, you see it in their appearance, how happy they are and how much they enjoy life, and you got to help them do that just like somebody helped me to get to that point. And there's nothing more fulfilling than that.
If we do help one person out of each of these seminars, if we have one person come to us afterwards and say, I learned something from this, that's our goal.